That moment today when that statue was toppled is destined to become one of the iconic images of this conflict, like the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Goodbye, Saddam! This really is the most astonishing. There it goes! There we go!
Good evening from Kuwait. In one of the most dramatic and exhilarating days of their modern history, the people of Baghdad saw their city wrenched from the grip of Saddam Hussein today and collapse into the hands of American forces. By the time tanks and armored personnel carriers rolled into main city squares, all signs of Saddam's authority had disappeared. Iraqis reacted with a mixture of exuberance and disbelief. One of them said, "The tyrant of our world is finished." The Americans are emphasizing tonight that Baghdad is not yet secure. And of course, no one seems to know the whereabouts of the Iraqi leader. The scene which encapsulated the end of the regime's hold on power was played out around a statue in the main city square. We have 4 reporters in Baghdad tonight. First, Neil Connery, who watched the toppling of Saddam Hussein.
Into the very heart of Baghdad, US tanks and troops finally arrive, spelling the end for the Iraqi regime. The Stars and Stripes have come to town. Saddam Hussein's reign of terror is over.
So nearly 3 weeks after this war began, US forces are now coming into the center of Baghdad. This is what regime change looks like.
Now just keep the truck off to the side. There's too much over here already.
But no one here was taking any chances, checking all the time for possible resistance.
Yes, I did. There's no barrels, nothing on the roof. No.
You're pleased to be in Baghdad?
Feeling satisfaction. I guess it's almost over. Probably get to go home soon.
What's it like being in the middle of Baghdad?
It's kind of crazy. Pretty good warm welcome from everybody, kind of.
Good luck. Stay
All right,
safe.
thank you. You too.
The welcome was definitely warm.
Welcome to Baghdad. I say to the American people, and thank you for all things in Iraq.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's up? Thank you.
The president's rule is no more. Years of repression and brutality have been brought to a close.
Everybody here suffered a lot from the unfair regime of Saddam Hussein and all his his soldiers and the others, and we just want to get rid of him these days, and let's wait and see what's America are heading for us.
Everyone's focus fell on the statue of Saddam, the symbol of his regime.
Tell me, will you bring this statue down?
At first, they tried to knock it down using a sledgehammer. The Americans brought in a tank recovery vehicle to finish the job. One over-exuberant Marine couldn't resist a bit of flag-waving patriotism first. The Stars and Stripes were taken down and replaced by the Iraqi flag. Then the moment of history. The moment Saddam's regime could finally be said to be at an end. The Americans began this war with what they called a decapitation strike, an attempt to kill Saddam. Today, the head of his statue was knocked off. The people he suppressed for so long, dragging it around the heart of Baghdad. But the questions of where the dictator is and whether he is dead or alive remain unanswered. Neil Connery, ITV News, in liberated Baghdad.
American Marines caught everyone by surprise when they drove almost casually into eastern Baghdad this morning in their soft-top trucks. But one of our ITV News teams was there to greet them. As Iraqis gathered along the roadside to cheer their liberators into town, our correspondent John Irvine and cameraman Phil By were the first journalists to meet them at the start of what was to be an extraordinary day. Here's John Irvine's exclusive report.
To venture out was a calculated risk, but an irresistible one. We'd heard no gunfire, and there were enough Iraqi cars on the road to give us confidence. One of the first places we reached was an office used by Saddam Hussein's secret police. Here his numerous portraits were going up in flames. At last, ordinary Iraqis were showing their true feelings towards their leader. When people saw our camera, they couldn't hide their delight at the turn of events. Further on, we spoke to some civilians who told me how they felt.
Saddam going. Yes. Saddam going. Saddam. I am happy. I am happy.
Feeling free. Freedom.
Then, all of a sudden, the United States Marines showed up.
This is one of those extraordinary moments. Something I never really thought I would see on the streets of the Iraqi capital.
Hello, we're from British television.
The Americans gestured for us to come and meet them.
How you doing?
My name is John Irvine.
Sergeant Commander, how you doing?
From ITN. Nice to meet you. Sergeant, you say?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Baghdad.
Oh, thank you.
How does it feel to be here?
Oh, it feels pretty good. I mean, it's nice to represent the Marine Corps here and Gulf 223 out of Los Alamitos, California.
Right. So when did you guys get in?
We've been here exactly.
Yeah.
We've been here. We just got here about a week ago.
Right.
And
okay. When did you get into Baghdad?
Baghdad, just now. Well, actually last night.
And what sort of welcome have you had from ordinary people here?
I'm Iraqi man. Oh, how you doing? Nice to meet you, sir.
We wait you a long time.
Oh, yes.
You know that?
We've been waiting to come here a long time, sir.
But we need finished very quick.
Yes, sir.
Not like 1991.
Right.
Hamid is our Iraqi driver.
Thank you.
The cache of weapons was in this civilian truck. They had all the RPGs, AK-47s on this civilian truck here.
Right, okay.
The Marines were destroying Iraqi weaponry they'd found in the back of a lorry. The soldiers appeared relaxed, some were clearly exhausted, but others were keen to talk about their experiences.
What sort of response have you had from ordinary civilians you've come across?
Actually, the civilians have been very cooperative. They're pretty cheerful that we're here, and we haven't had any conflict with them whatsoever.
One of the men was a veteran of the first Gulf War.
The first Gulf War is pretty much we had a clear-cut objective. We had to push all the Iraqis out of Kuwait, push them back towards Iraq. Everything was pretty much wide in the open. Just keep heading south, and everything we saw was enemy. This time, as we go through, we have a civilian population to worry about, and it's kind of hard for us because we have to judge between the civilian and military, and it's easy for us to win the war by completely destroying everything in front of us, but that's not what we want to do.
Several Marines were guarding the hotel that had been the base for the UN weapons inspectors in Baghdad. Looters had been here, and the Americans rescued UN cars before they were driven away. At one point, the soldiers thought they were coming under fire.
Behind the white truck!
Snipers got eyes on, sir. They're looking right now.
The snipers with eyes on were two Marine sharpshooters on the hotel roof, but they weren't needed. Eventually, the Marine commander decided that the Iraqi gunfire was probably more celebratory than aggressive. These men are part of a company of 200 American Marines who fought their way into Baghdad last night. They are pleased with their accomplishments so far and remain confident. They don't believe this war is over yet, but they do believe it's nearing an end. And indeed, that came very quickly. Just a few hours later, the US cavalry rolled straight into the city centre unopposed. what a formidable force this was. The Americans mightn't yet control Baghdad in its entirety, but they do hold all the important parts. A war of 3 weeks has brought an end to decades of Iraqi misery. John Irvine, ITV News in liberated Baghdad.
Let's go live now to John Irvine in Baghdad. John, what would you say was the decisive moment when the regime began obviously to implode and when the fall of Baghdad became inevitable?
Well, I think there was a cumulative build-up towards collapse. Today wasn't particularly decisive. That was more a victory parade for the Americans. What was more important, I think, were the events of yesterday when those tanks crossed the main bridge over the Tigris and the Americans had a presence both sides of the river. All of a sudden, the apologists for the regime, like the Iraqi information minister, couldn't refute what people were seeing with their own eyes. He was showing up to be a fraud and a liar.
John, you've been there now for several months, but this certainly was the most extraordinary day.
Very much so. I'll take away a lot of memories from today, meeting those Marines for the first time. But more significant for me, I think, has been the reaction of my Iraqi friends. You saw in my report our driver Hamid, how genuine he was about welcoming that American Marine. Another of our friends here, Karim, who's looked after our interests for a long time, spoke to me about Saddam Hussein. He said he's glad he's gone, he's a rubbish man. All of a sudden people can be honest, and demonstratively so. This has been a country where for so long careless talk has quite literally cost lives. But all of a sudden, not anymore.
John Irvine, thank you. So, on day 21 of the war, let's look at the sequence of events leading to the fall of Baghdad. During the night, thousands of US troops began their move from positions in the west, northeast, and south of the city towards the center of Baghdad. They encountered little resistance. By mid-morning, 20 tanks began taking up positions near Tahrir Square on the banks of the Tigris. Some of them moved up to the Palestine Hotel. Not very far away, American Marines seized what's been described as the headquarters of Saddam's secret police. Other official buildings were gutted and looted. Later in the day, the statue of Saddam Hussein in Baghdad Square was brought down, symbolizing the liberation of the city. But what about the rest of the country? Tonight, much of southern Iraq is under the control of the British, who are based in Basra. In the north, Iraqi forces still hold the northern oil town of Kirkuk, Saddam Hussein's hometowns of Tikrit and Mosul. But as word of events in Baghdad spread north, rejoicing Kurds took to the Kurdish-held city of Erbil. As much as anyone else, they too had reason to celebrate, as Julian Mannion explains.
In Kurdish northern Iraq, an explosion of joy. The people of Erbil and other towns have been following every development in this war. Many moved their families further north, out of range of Saddam's missiles. Today they saw the regime crack, and they surged out into the streets, finally convinced that Saddam's rule is finished.
No one is more pleased to see the apparent downfall of the Iraqi regime than the Kurdish people of northern Iraq. For them, the name Saddam Hussein has meant years of repression, of war, of being driven out of their homes and forced to live as refugees, and even of gas attacks like the tragedy of Halabja. As you can see, the moment of his downfall is here, a moment of triumph.
The Kurdish region has been free of Saddam's rule for a decade, but it has still lived in fear of him. Today, people didn't hesitate to say what they think about the dying Iraqi regime.
Saddam Hussein, no!
There were chants of support and gratitude for the American president. Here in the north, the question now is how long the frontline battles will go on. In spite of the bombing, the Iraqi army is still hanging on in front of the cities of Mosul and Kirkuk. But American troops are becoming ever more visible. And this afternoon we saw Kurdish reinforcements, men from both the region's political factions mixed together, heading for the front.
The Iraqi front line, the northern front line, is crumbling. In fact, they have been under intensive air attacks and pressures
from the Peshmerga, from the US forces, whom we are working and cooperating very closely.
People here now believe that it's only a matter of time before they join their fellow Kurds in Mosul and Kirkuk, celebrating in the streets. Julian Mannion, ITV News, in Erbil, northern Iraq.
That moment today, when that statue was toppled, is destined to become one of the iconic images of this conflict, like the fall of the Berlin Wall. My colleague Michael Nicholson, who reported the war in Vietnam and many others since, has been in Baghdad before the start of the war on Iraq began. This is his view of that historic moment.
Well, we waited a long time for these guys to turn up, and here they are, in the middle of Baghdad, not on the other side of the Tigris, but right here in the center. And then. Are you happy to see this?
I am very happy. I am very happy to see this.
Well, the Iraqis, having failed with their rope noose, the Americans have now shown them how really to topple Saddam Hussein. It's now 7:15 on Wednesday, the 9th of April. And, well, let's use that old cliche, an historic day. 4, 3, 2, 1. There it goes. The end of Saddam Hussein. One last pull. Goodbye, Saddam. This really is the most astonishing. There it goes. There it goes. What a moment. We've said this many times in our lives, haven't we, at moments like this, that there'll never be a day like this. Well, believe me, having covered the news for the last 40 years, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. The death of Saddam Hussein, symbolically toppled by the Americans at 10 minutes to 7 on Wednesday, the 9th of April. They've come in 350 miles from the south. Despite Saddam's threat of a ring of steel around the city, despite Saddam's threat of a human barrier to stop the Americans coming in, they have arrived. And you know, not a shot has been fired in anger against them. How about that?
And that's tonight's ITV News at 9. We're back with more from Baghdad and details of the Chancellor's budget at 11 o'clock. You can also follow events on the ITV News channel. But for me in Kuwait and our teams in Iraq, on the day that Baghdad fell, goodbye